feel like sometimes life is really mental.
Dude, that's actually a really good name for a podcast.
My parents used to like bang that into my head over and over. Like, you are okay. Nothing's gonna happen as long as you keep working hard. You just keep going and keep pushing. I don't know if that was the correct lesson.
A lesson we missed was the fact that it was okay to quit and there's strength in quitting. Sometimes you realize that it's harder to quit something than keep going.
Hey everyone, welcome to Really Mental, where we want you to know that no matter who you are, you're not alone. And if you're new here, then welcome, and be sure to follow us on our socials at Really Mental Media. We'd love to hear from you and what you think of this episode. And also please consider sending it to a friend if there's something that you think they could resonate with. I'm really excited for today's episode with eaJ and Millennial Therapist, and we're going to be talking today in the first part of our chat about learning to manage your time and letting go of control. And also another topic which we haven't really spoken about, but panic attacks. So if any of that interests you, then make sure to stick around. I think you're going to find it really interesting. And without further ado, we're going to welcome eaJ and Millennial Therapist onto the show. Let's welcome them both. Well, thank you for joining us again. Really excited for today's episode with Millennial Therapist and eaJ. I've been thinking about this chat for a minute and what's going to come from it, because I think it's always interesting when you have a couple of different perspectives joining at one. We had Millennial Therapist, so Sara, on the show a bit back, and now we're introducing a new guest in eaJ, and I'm excited for where today goes. So without further ado, how is your mental health, eaJ, at the moment? And can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself too, for those who don't know you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys just giving me an opportunity to be here and speak my mind. It's funny because I've actually been looking for a therapist recently, and they're so expensive. So I just haven't been able to commit yet. They're so expensive. No, and that's no shots at you. It's just I feel like the ones that I've been talking to have just been a little bit out of my budget, so I'm looking. But for those of you watching, hi, my name is eaJ, or Jay, as a lot of people know me. I play video games on Twitch sometimes, but mostly I'm a singer-songwriter and kind of just doing my thing in America and making songs that I resonate with.
I'm keen to hop in, but before we do, I also wanted to ask you, Sara, can you tell people a little bit about yourself for people who may be coming in and not familiar with your work as much?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Sara Kuburic, often known as the Millennial Therapist. So I'm an existential psychotherapist, columnist, and I just wrote a book called It's For Me. So that just came out 2 months ago. My first book, which makes me very happy and excited. It's the thing I'm most proud of.
It's a very, I feel like, humble introduction for a book, because I was thinking, Jay, like for us, we, spend maybe a day working on a song and we can at least know where it's heading. But writing a novel, like that's a full, literally like 6 month, maybe even more, like journey to know where you're heading.
Thanks. It was painful. No, it was fun, but it was also very hard. So I appreciate the acknowledgement. It takes a second, for sure.
How do you both work on like loosening your grip when it comes to like the things that you're working on artistically and just as a person?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask about that. I have like serious control issues, I think, where I need everything to be in the boat and the boat to safely be traveling, but also be traveling at the right pace to get to the destination at the correct time with the correct people receiving the boat.
I think it's almost like, maybe it's not a really pretty answer. It's acknowledging your limitation. I always thought if I pushed hard enough, I can do anything. And I think this was like a humbling experience where it's like, I can push really hard and it still won't be what I want it to be. So why am I wasting my time? And, there's certain things I needed to get done. Like I needed to write a boundaries chapter because everyone likes to talk about boundaries. And I remember sitting there and being like, oh my God, if I hear another basic fact about boundaries, I will just lose my mind, And yet I was about to write a basic chapter about boundaries. And that was really hard for me. And then I had to go, what is the one thing I find interesting about boundaries, despite the narratives that are already out there? What is something that still gets me excited? And I think it was just really surrendering the perception of what I thought I had to do and knowing my limitations of like, I'm not going to write a good chapter if I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. and really connecting to the value and letting that drive. And so for me, surrender is kind of knowing my limitations, letting go of the control, and doing my best, but in a way that actually aligns with me. I think surrender has to be with alignment. Otherwise, I'm not really sure if surrender is helpful. How about you, Will?
Yeah, I'm curious.
It's interesting hearing how you approach it, because the one thing that I am getting better at is working myself out of a place where I know I'm forcing it or just like overdoing something. For me, I would say it manifests itself in just like a bad work-life balance. Bad being my own subjective like judgment on it. And I think sometimes I try to push like everything up the hill, like just by myself, right? I have this idea that I can. And when I reach a point where I'm like, it would be before like burnout. When I reach a point where I'd be burnt out, then I would accept this reality that like I actually can't control, everything that happens in my life. And so I guess recently I've been doing this thing that I learned in therapy. It's called habit mapping. And so if it's midnight and I have like a song idea, it's like broken down into three things: the trigger, the action, and then how you feel after. And I know that when I usually get that trigger of like, oh, I want to write a song, and I do the action at that and I stay up to maybe 3 a.m., the result is it just passes over to the next day where I feel like less productive. I have to sleep in later to get more sleep. And overall, it just has like a negative impact, I feel like, on my mental health. Like my decision making is a lot worse. So though I've been using that a lot in trying to like, I guess, break down unhelpful habits where I am trying to force things or do too much. And yeah, it's not perfect, but that opened my eyes to the fact that like actions have consequences. And that's such a simple thing that we hear so much.
Wait, what was your trigger for like having this epiphany?
I've realized that I'd spent so much time since I was young, career focused, like 15, 16, because I started like, that's when I first had success in music. It's when I first signed to my first label. And I just like in school, all I would do was just like focus on my career. The point being to that is like, I didn't know my life outside of like just working and stuff. And like, what do I like to do outside of that? And so when I went through like a breakup this year, like where I sort of had that as a crutch of like having, more access to just more life and like fun too, I realized, okay, I have to build that for myself. Have you both had a point in time where you've had like an epiphany moment of like, wow, I think this is like a rock bottom or a place I really have to like work out from?
I'm similar to your story in the aspect that it may have been a little later in my life, but ever since I was like 19, I've just been very career focused and I haven't really taken a break. And I guess that's kind of led me to always push on to the next project, to the next project. There was never really a moment to breathe. And that's led me to having to have control of everything. Because if I don't, then the last 12 years of my life just falls apart.
No, this really resonates with me too. I mean, I wasn't cool like you guys in music, but I started university at 17 and I just finished last summer. It's been a really long time. It's a really long road, obviously, to do this. And I think a lot of it, I think as an academic, you have to be incredibly controlled. It's all about that. And I think, I've been taught that from a very young age. And then when I was in my mid 20s, I had my very first panic attack. And part of that was realizing that I wasn't in control. And I think that was such an intense realization for me that I felt like it was death. I thought everything I was doing was for me and I was doing everything right. And then I realized how freaking miserable I was and that I hated my life. And then I looked back and went, but I sacrificed at that point, whatever it was, 7-8 years of my life to get here. And everyone's telling me I'm doing a good job. Everything seems pretty good on resume. So why am I so miserable? And then I realized that I wasn't in control as much as I thought, and that the things I was controlling actually led to the life I didn't want. And that was kind of my start of self-loss, of my panic attacks that lasted for about 2 years. So that's a fascinating thing. Like it wasn't an epiphany in a positive sense. It was like oh, I am actually I hate my life. I kind of hate myself. And the control I've exerted didn't lead me where I wanted to go. And the control I really want is not what I have. And so that was my relationship with the control piece. And I think panic attacks are interesting because you can't control them. And it almost took my body to teach me that I had to let go and I had to write it out. And so that was an interesting like lesson I received from my own body.
Where was the point where you took a break from school? Because I'm sure, like from the way that I view the world, and obviously I know nothing about your story, but I feel like I would have entered that situation and be like, "There's no way I can quit school right now," but you somehow did it.
I was like, I'm fine. I'm gonna have panic attacks in class, which I did. And I would like almost fully black out in class and people didn't even notice. I was like, no, I can totally do this.
Holy shit!
And then, and you know, and I was the only thing that kept me from pushing was the fact that I was already doing my internship at the time and I was seeing clients. And when I was in session, I was actually really incredibly grounded. I don't even know how to explain. It was one of the only times I was grounded. And I think it's because I wasn't focused on myself. So I was actually doing really well. And then one day, right before a session, I started to get a panic attack. And I like immediately went to my supervisor and was like, I need to quit now because I would have never put someone else in that position. They knew we were students and all that, but I think that that's really what made me take a step back. If it was just academic work, oh my God, I would have like had a panic attack, thrown up, come back in class, borrowed someone's notes. Like I would have kept going. So I was really glad that something like this stopped me because it's amazing how much you can endure. So tell me more. Do you have panic attacks? I was like, real personal. So do you get panic attacks? Have you gotten panic attacks? Whichever you feel more comfortable sharing.
Yeah, 100%. I actually started getting panic attacks. It's funny because I feel like I hear the story a lot, but I got my first one on a plane ride too, on tour.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Dude, it sucks.
Dude,
because
it's horrible.
I can't do anything about it.
No, it is the worst.
That's so bad.
Have you as well, Will?
Yeah, I have. And it's also so interesting hearing that because I saw someone I know, they were having a panic attack similar to what you were describing, being paralyzed, that feeling. And my experience of panic attacks is different to that. So I was literally like, is this like an episode or like some psychosis thing? Because I didn't even know it could manifest itself in that way. So I actually think it's really positive to like share that because I'm sure there's people out there that are going to experience that with their friends some way or another, however it ends up. Like I had no idea and I literally like did not handle it. Like I handled it the best I could. I'll put it that way. But I was like, not know what to do. For me, my first panic attack that I ever had was actually in high school and I was 17, turning 18. And I felt so much anxiety around like social interactions and so much pressure to be like this person that I just felt like I wasn't, like this confident, like cool person that I wanted to be, but I was like, I don't know, like I just feel like I'm like awkward, like yeah, I just felt all this self like shaming from all of that, and especially that awkward thing. Like I didn't want to be seen that way. So anyway, all of that tension built up in my body. I remember there was this girl that I liked, right? And I was walking through and I was like, and I like send so much love to that version of me. But in my head, I was like, I hope she doesn't say anything to me because I feel so anxious right now. I don't want to speak to her. And then literally she said something to me and I just like froze. I don't know, like I was just like, oh, like, yeah. And then I literally ran down to the toilets and I had a panic attack. When you build that situation up in your head and you play it out a million times and you're like, I just hope it doesn't play out like that. It happened then, that time. The worst it could have in my head. And so I was just like, oh, and like, I was like, oh, they probably think all these things. And it just makes it worse because it's like you have that anxiety and that suffocating feeling. And then on top of that, you have a shame, well, at least I did, of like having that experience. So it's like double, someone's pouring like concrete on you and then like, again, they're smacking you with bricks as well.
I mean, I was learning to be a therapist. I was seeing clients with anxiety. The last thing you're going to be like, oh, it's cool. I have it too. Like it was Like I was like, I shouldn't be having this. Like, this is so inappropriate. Like, there was so much shame for me around that part of like, am I even able to help people if I'm in this state? Well, obviously, while having a panic attack, absolutely not. But I just like, I think it was like a weird role reversal for me. And that felt really insane in the moment. And I never struggled with anxiety early on. And so it just felt like I was ambushed and I didn't know what that meant for me professionally. So I had a little existential crisis on the side where I was like,
I
yeah.
feel like I
Huh.
resonate with that so much, especially with the when you're like, I shouldn't be going through this. Because I think we have, I think, so much tension and anxiety we create from ourselves with like expectations of what we should be. And that's like the
Mhm.
tension when we feel like we're not that and it like rubs against the version of who we think we should be. And I just got another memory of another panic attack and it just reminds me of that. Like I felt like I should be this person. And it's like that anxiety of like, oh, what if they like, what if I can't be that? And then you just build it up to a place where it's like paralyzing.
I feel like everyone's story kind of like differs from there. Like you had this whole moment of like almost not being able to move, and you had this like I had to go to the bathroom and like figure this out. Like it's just so interesting how many tricks the brain can play. That's kind of how I view it. I feel like.
I feel, in retrospect, not in the moment, it was one of the biggest lessons for me in a positive sense. I think unless my body
Mm,
forced me to change, I wouldn't have. And I wonder, something I usually talk about is like, if your body is anxious, I see it as a messenger because I think it's not just trying to threaten you and be an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. It is trying to communicate something with you.
Mm,
And I wonder, what lessons you guys took away.
well, I didn't know what it was, so I kept having it, and it kept happening. So I just thought I was sick because I've never really like heard of like a physical manifestation of a panic attack. I thought it was just like kind of like in your head, and like I just had no idea. I was uneducated on it, and it just kept happening. I kept going to the, and I laughed when you were saying when you were telling your story, Sarah, because of how lackadaisical they were acting. Because I remember me going to the ER and saying, "There is something wrong with me
Yeah.
now, fix me."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I get it.
but there's like, yeah, if there was a lesson that I took away from it, I guess it was just kind of the realization that, hey, maybe it isn't mind over matter on everything.
Ooh. And that's a control topic, but yes, I like that.
Is it? I think that was kind of my takeaway.
That's cool.
can you explain what you mean by that? I think I understand the mind over matter.
Mind over matter is saying you can control it. I mean, I think it can be quite a harmful phrase. It's like you can control anything if you put your mind to it. What have we been teaching people for a really long time? And I mean, yes, there's certain things that you can definitely overcome. You can do a cold plunge, I'm sure. You see on TikTok all the time. I'm sure part of that is mind over matter. But I do think that that's messaging around control that a lot of us have internalized without realizing what it's saying. And for a lot of people, the interpretation, I'm not saying that's the intent, but the interpretation is I should be able to control everything.
Mm.
And I do think that that is just unrealistic.
100% agree with that. It's so funny because I'm not sure how you guys grew up, but like my parents used to like bang that into my head over and over. Like, yo, you are okay. Nothing's gonna happen as long as you keep working hard. It's fine. No amount of work is too much. You just keep swallowing, keep going, and keep pushing. That's kind of how everyone lives life. And I don't know if that was the correct lesson, or maybe it was a correct lesson just said in the wrong way.
I feel like something I've been thinking about recently, and to that point of like how you're raised is like the idea that you just got to keep going no matter what. And I think that it comes from a genuine place as parents of like wanting us to be able to move through things. And like parents obviously don't want us to see, to be struggling. However, I feel like it has also made me feel uncomfortable with not being okay to the point where it's like unproductive, where it's like if I feel uncomfortable, there's something wrong. And that's how I perceive discomfort. And it also means that when I feel anxious, it like heightens it for me too. And definitely some of it is to do with just experiences I've had. But I would say as well, like growing up, and I love my parents so much. I had a really good upbringing. I also just felt like emotionally, like, you know, I don't necessarily like speak too much about my emotions with like my family. It's just not something that like we speak about a bunch. And I think
Mm.
it has taken me a lot of time to like figure out what to do with them because I have, you know, obviously like those emotions that surface. So I don't know, when you said that, Jay, I just like thought of that because it can be really tough growing up with people our age where it's like the parents are from a different generation where like mental
Mhm.
health was literally not even like something you should speak about like in society.
I feel like a lesson we missed, and I don't know, also as an immigrant, I think maybe this was like really drilled into me of like working hard, but what we missed was the fact that it was okay to quit and there's strength in quitting. Sometimes when you are an adult, you realize that it's harder to quit something than keep going. So our relationship is a really, really great example of that. And the skill of quitting, I think, is just as important as the skill of endurance. And I just don't think that we've ever been taught, like, when do you know it's time to step away? How do you do it graciously? How do you know, do it in a way that aligns with you? And it's always like, just keep going. And I, I think our generation lacked that, and I hope we can start talking about it more because there is no shame in quitting. I don't know why that's such a shameful thing. And I know that as millennials, we're like the flaky generation where everyone's like, they just do whatever they want. And I think we have almost taken to over proving people wrong a little too far, where I see a lot of millennials just keep pushing because they once said that they would do this thing or because people expect them to. And so, anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I think the art of quitting is important.
That's hitting a little too close to home right now.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. It's just like, yeah, and like I'm sure you feel this a lot, Will, but like, just like music is so subjective. You can make like the greatest song in the world, and then the next day think, and throw it out, right? Or the opposite, and it's just like, I really have been thinking about that concept of quitting for a
Mm.
while, and it's interesting that you bring it up. So I appreciate that insight.
I'm not encouraging anyone to quit their song, right? Your fans are going to be pissed, but I am glad that you've thought about it because I do think, regardless if anyone keeps going or quits, that conversation, that conscious choice is so important. And I think we need to be making conscious choices all the time and reevaluating what we're doing all the time rather than making a decision once and then just sticking through with it. And again, this is relationships, this is jobs. You're changing as a person. You can't anticipate one decision you made 10 years ago, 5 years ago to still resonate. So I always tell people reevaluation is super great. Considering quitting is great because that gives you an opportunity to be intentional and choose what you want to do.
I love that because I think like having awareness is so important, and you touched on that there of just like continually evaluating if something is serving you, and
Mhm.
that is reflected in like yeah, career, like relationships, friendships. This if you let things just keep on going without any evaluation, I think that's how you end up in a place where it's like maybe you don't want to be because you haven't thought through where things are taking you. And I actually had a thought the other day, like I was really stressing out about like this song, and I was sort of thinking to myself like I could like this isn't the end of the world, and like I can find another career if I really want to at like any point in my
Mm.
life, and I know I will be great at it because I'll put lots of effort into like making sure that I am good at it and like can get to where I want to go with it. So when you were talking about like quitting, I don't know, it just made me think of that because even though I literally just signed like a new contract and I won't be quitted, if my anyone from my label is listening, that's the clarity. But it's like it's a freeing thought, and I think that's how you actually make better art is realizing that you don't have to like put so much pressure on yourself too. What do you think though?
That's such a scary thought. I can't even fathom it. And like the moment you said it, I've been dancing around it in my head, and that's just so scary. Cause like I don't think I don't think a lot of people, if they've been doing something a very very long time, especially if it's
Mm,
something that they've, well, like personally for me, I was
yeah.
kind of thrown into music at 18. I've been doing it for like this whole time, and I don't know what else I would do.
But is not knowing what else you would do a reason enough to do something you don't want to?
These are great questions. I'm glad we're talking about it because I don't think most people have a space to even hear about this kind of conversation anywhere. It's so scary to like blurt out of your mouth. You're talking about your career, your life. If you've been doing it for all your 20s, which a lot of people call the building blocks, correct? And if you've like sowed all these seeds and you feel like you've never reaped the sow, essentially. I don't know if that's correct. I feel like, can you quit?
Wow. Especially when you've had like you know that you have had the markers for like a successful career as well.
I don't know. To be honest, I'm a little in my head about everything right now, but I feel like I genuinely don't know. And that's why this question scares me so much because I haven't considered, am I still doing this because I still love it? Or am I doing this because it's all I know? It's getting so deep.
Wow, that's powerful. I've never had that thought, but now that's making me think.
I think it's a valid question for all artists because at some point, especially when you're a label artist, you have to understand that, yeah, you could be emotional and your project is cool, but business is business sometimes. Like you got to get things done. And like especially when it's under another label, you have a timeline for things and you don't really get the luxury to think, do I still love music today? And I'm sure that answer changes day by day, but that's such a scary question for anyone in any career, I think.
And at what point are we doing the exact same thing and expecting a different outcome?
Don't!
Throws out the headphones. Throws out the headphones.
Good.
I mean, your thoughts led to this thought.
Right.
So
Yeah.
do you know, like so many of us do this in so many areas of our lives where we're like, we haven't whatever. We didn't reap the sows, as you have said, like, and yet we're still there sowing more. And so it's like, at what point do you walk away or stop anticipating the fruit to come or the whatever? I think are we pivoting hard enough? Do we need to stop altogether? But doing the exact same thing and expecting different results, I don't think ever actually leads to anything.
When that moment comes along, how do you like work through the anxiety of taking a leap into something different with like the feelings of, is this right for me? Because I think anxiety blurs a lot of things because anxiety is also fear, and fear is, false evidence appearing real sometimes. Sometimes I find anxiety hard to decipher because I feel like it's like can come from a place of real validity and also just simply being so scared of the unknown.
I'm an existentialist. That helps because I find life quite absurd and like unseriously serious and seriously unserious in terms of like, I think we take life too seriously sometimes. And I don't think we take enough responsibility as humans and the human race, but I do think we take it too seriously. And I think life is to be experienced and played with and molded. Otherwise, why are you alive? And so I think that kind of approach takes away some of the pressure being like the right answer. What is the right answer? I don't even know what that means. You're a human being with a billion possibilities. Like, I don't believe there is like the one right thing you can do. I think there's a thing that aligns with you. I think there's a thing that will lead you to be who you want to be. I think there's a way that you can express yourself that's, more authentic. But I think taking the pressure off of like the right way to live or be, I think takes away some of that anxiety. And so it's more of a worldview, maybe a mindset switch that for a long time, I believed there was the right and wrong way to do everything. And I think the more I transitioned into like, things are gray and blurry, and we're not talking about like hurting other people here. We're talking about like self-expression and things like that. I think he opened it up and that anxiety lessened because at no point did I believe I was going to have a miserable life. The only outcome is I would have a different life than what I imagined. And there's so many different, like pick your own adventure. And so I think that's how I've been trying to view the world. And that's lessened some of that anxiety of like throwing yourself into the unknown.
Wow. Question. Someday you just wake up and you're just like, I'm just not passionate about this anymore, you think you would jump ship?
That was a really awesome episode, and I hope that you found it super enjoyable and also helpful for whatever you're going through and facing in your life. If you did enjoy this episode, please consider rating it 5 stars and also sending it to somebody you love and care about that you think could enjoy it as well. One of the things I definitely took away, which I really appreciated, hearing and us talking about, was panic attacks and dealing with the shame and unknown of everything that comes with a panic attack, even when it comes to just diagnosing what it is. And if you've experienced something that you feel could be like that, then I hope that this has helped you, and definitely please consider talking it over with a professional to continue to get more help with that. I know it can be so helpful to speak to a professional. We have part 2 coming out next week, so make sure you check in at the same time, Sunday at 10 a.m. PDT, to see part 2 of this episode with eaJ and Millennial Therapist get released. All right, sweet. We'll see you then. Love you.